This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 174.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramzi.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another video or podcast. I feel like I'm very lucky. And I'm lucky because of multiple reasons, but being in this environment, in the sales engineering environment, has been amazing. Over the last few weeks and the coming weeks, I've been having guests on the show that have been listening to the show for a while. And whenever I talk to them, they all seem to say like, oh, but I don't know if I have anything to bring to the table. And every time I talk to them, they bring so much. And that just shows that people from anywhere, from any walk of life, from at any stage of their career can help someone in their career. And the conversations have been amazing. I wouldn't say they're for beginners or advanced. Like we talked to Supriya last week, and she was amazing. She talked about her growth path into sales engineering. And today we're talking to Sonu, who's an SE manager who was quote unquote bullied into becoming an SE manager. And it's just, everybody has something to give, and Supriya's in different stage from Sonu, and they both gave back so much to the community just by having this chat with me last week and with Binny. So I'm thankful to you guys there, to those who are listening, who either just share this post or this podcast with other people, or actually come on and start talking about their experiences. Because in my opinion, if you help one person, that's more than enough. And Sonu, our conversation with Sonu was amazing. We've been having great guests, like throughout we've been having great guests, but recently either I'm getting better at asking questions, or Benny's getting better at asking questions, or the people we're talking to are more comfortable talking to us. So it's been great. So Sonu, he's going to introduce himself in a few seconds. SE manager, and we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff about leadership and individual leadership. You don't have to be a manager to be in a leadership position. So we talked about a lot of different things like that, and how we can get better, and why he became a SE manager. And instead of me sharing all that, how about we just listen to Sonu talk about his experience, and let's see what we can get out of that. What's up, Sonu? Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much both for having me. I'm super excited.
It's our pleasure. I'm excited to talk to you as well. Maybe you can introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Sonu Sahi. I'm an SE manager in Canada, which, as I understand, is quite rare. And currently I work at DocuSign.
So you're an SE manager for a big company in Canada, which I guess that's rare. I've talked to a few people, but the majority of SE managers that I know are out of the US. So can you talk to us a little bit about your journey, how you got there?
Yeah, it's not as exciting as other folks I've heard on this podcast. It's actually quite stereotypical. As a good SE, I have a comp sci degree and went down the path of wanting to be a developer. A few years after that, I quickly shifted from a consulting role where I was an Oracle developer doing PLSQL and a lot of Oracle Forms stuff for the Alberta government, and switched over to a similar skill set, but working on a brand new IPTV service that our telco in Canada, TELUS, was about to launch. So this was like version 1 of what is now probably version 3 or 4 of whatever they're serving to the public now. Okay. So it's pretty cool. And then from there, I moved to technology architecture, which is more of an R&D type of role. And that is where I got a lot of experience in everything to do with big data and analytics early in about 2012. And that took me over to the software side of the house, which is where I have never looked back from.
So you have a fairly technical background. You were hands-on for a long time.
I used to.
All right. Well, how long have you been a sales engineer then? Or
probably
in sales, I guess.
Probably six years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. And you became a manager recently after becoming a sales engineer directly.
But halfway through that 6 years, yeah. Probably 3 or 4 years as a manager now. I've lost track already.
Okay, cool. Benny's writing notes frantically, but I don't care about his questions. I want to ask. No, go ahead, Benny.
That's okay. It'll all even out. I guess, yeah. So a bunch of questions as we'll ask as we go. But just off the top, so you're an SE manager here in Canada. It's always nice to speak to fellow Canadians. Just out of curiosity, where in Canada? What city?
Oh, sorry, I'm in Edmonton.
Edmonton. Oh, very cool out west. Cool.
Yeah.
We're up in Ottawa, by the way, just an FYI.
Okay.
But so is your team also here in Canada, or do you manage a remote team even in non-COVID times?
So yeah, I'm managing a remote team within Canada. So I have responsibility for the entire Canadian solution engineering business across all the market segments. And I had a similar role in my old job as well. So it's always managed remotely. I have folks in Ottawa where you are and folks in Toronto. And I was going to say in Toronto, but really now it's like the surrounding areas of Toronto. A bunch of people migrated outside of that core.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, nobody wants to pay the big rents for and not getting anything in return out of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Benny, go ahead. I think you had a follow up.
Well, it's more so just like to that point as well. I think a lot of people too, just on those outskirts, those little boroughs outside of Toronto, will also say they're from Toronto. So it's all about the same anyway. Sorry, don't get me for that.
It's pretty amazing though to think of like the technical talent that is in all these bedroom communities around Toronto that you wouldn't assume, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was talking to Kerry Sokolsky. He has pre-sales mastery, I think.
Yep.
He was talking like in terms of sales engineering, Toronto is like the third biggest developing sales engineering requirement. I'm not even speaking well today. I've been up since 4, so that's why. But yeah, it's one of the biggest need for sales engineers right now. So yeah,
it is pretty much the mecca of the SE world within Canada. That's for sure.
But it also seems like it's outside of Canada as well. Like in North America, it's one of the biggest as well.
I've been hiring like crazy over the past 6 months, and I would say I'm surprised at how many Canadians are working for American companies, but a lot of their accounts are US based. So yeah, I agree. I think the Toronto market has an amazing core of talent.
You think maybe so? I've worked in an organization in the past where I work with, I forget actually if I work with them or we work with them, but where they had a lot of their sales and more like personable people, I suppose, kind of working up here. And well, personable, I guess that was more the North American thing, but technical personable people were very much based in Canada. So a lot of support people were based here in Canada, pre-sales based in Canada. And it was kind of cool. Like half of me kind of wondered, I wonder if that has to do with like Canadians kind of have that stereotypical politeness feel, and like maybe people trust Canadians a little bit more. And so maybe we're not like the as aggressive, go for it American salesperson per se, but we are like the trustworthy, still very competent, and like we'll get the sale but make you feel good about it type of Canadian thing. I don't know.
You have a point. There could be something to that requires more investigation. I think that's a pretty solid observation. What has been surprising though is, and you folks probably know this as well, but the difference in the sales cycle between US-based businesses and Canadian-based businesses, it requires a different sort of level of aggressiveness, I would say, from the American sales teams. And so I was always wondering, are the US companies just taking the most aggressive SEs that Canada has to offer and planting them over on the American side, or how is that difference being worked out, right?
That's a fair point. Actually, to that point as well. So DocuSign, big American company. What's it like being a Canadian like pre-sales leader working for an American company? Do you feel those clashes sometimes with culture or anything like that?
No, I wouldn't say there's any sort of cultural clashes. We actually have a pretty big establishment here in Canada. So there are about 7 different sales teams dedicated to each market segment, and then the solution engineering team for Canada that works and partners with all of them. But in addition to that, there's marketing folks here. There's one of the directors who has an entirely US remote team who runs creative services is based in Quebec. I think DocuSign's a pretty forward-thinking company that just hires the right talent for the right role, regardless of geography. And I think more organizations, especially in a post-COVID world, should be looking that way.
One additional thing about hiring people in Canada, and maybe that's not a good thing to say on this podcast, but we're cheaper, right? You pay both 150K or 200K or whatever the number is, but one is in US dollars, one is in Canadian, which is like $5 US. So it makes a little bit of a difference.
Sometimes it can. Sometimes that difference may not be exactly as it's stated, because sometimes organizations have to go pay additional fees to go hire consulting lawyers to go draft agreements that comply with the provincial laws where, they don't have that standard. Same thing with benefits. They've got to go find vacation policies that align to whatever province you're living in. So there's added expenses to taking on, employees from different countries.
It's definitely is, but if it's already a big company that already has that information in there, so
Yeah.
it makes it easier. But yeah,
Yeah.
I worked for an American company as well, and my manager was based out of the U.S. And I can honestly say I didn't see. I think I was one of the more aggressive SEs versus the SEs in the U.S. They were more laid back. I'm not sure why, but my customers were in Canada,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
No, fair enough. We used to comment on this difference 2 companies ago at a big data startup called Hortonworks, where I worked, and we didn't have a separate Canadian entity when I joined, so we were part of like, I don't know, Central America or Central US or something.
Okay.
And so when we were doing QBRs, we would compare the deals that were done in the US and we would look at the sales cycle, and then we would look at all the deals in Canada. And it was like, well, why do the Canadians all need 3 months more to go close these deals? Right. And it was just little tiny differences like that where
Yeah.
I saw cultural differences.
Yeah, I noticed that in the summer in Canada, it's impossible to close a deal.
Oh, dude,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah. Everyone's on vacation for like the 6 months we get, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure why people don't take vacations in the winter and go somewhere warm. Everybody takes vacations in the summer and go somewhere warm.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure. So why, like, did you ever want to become an SE leader, or was that thrust upon you?
It's a good question. I had the chance to be a manager early in my career, midway through the career, and then again later in the career, and I had shunned each and every opportunity. I was always on like this really amazing individual contributor trajectory where I thought, why would I give this up? This is foolish to give this up and go take on, at the time, what I viewed as like babysitting type of responsibilities, which couldn't be so much further from the truth. Like I was so dead wrong about my assumptions of what a manager actually did on a day-to-day basis. I did not want to be an SE leader in the beginning. I was quasi-bullied into this role by an AE that I worked really well with, as well as our AVP of sales at that time at a different company. They saw something in me that said leadership and kind of pushed me into it. And I'm so thankful to both of them. And they both know that. So I'm not,
Did they ever tell you what that was?
It's hard to say. One of them tried to, but this was while they were trying to sell me on applying for the role. So I wasn't sure how much stock to put into this or whether they're just kind of blowing smoke, right?
All right.
Man, this sounds like I'm bragging and I didn't intend to on this.
It's a humble brag.
They had told me that I had an innate ability to capture people's attention, get them on my side or get them on my page, and then have everyone sort of unified around me and follow a direction. And they saw that when I was an individual contributor. So I'll give you an example that was used on me to go convince me to go apply for the management. When I joined Hortonworks, we had a group of like the brightest people. And I can say that because I was their customer. So a lot of these folks were my SE when I was on the other side of the table as the customer. And I remember coming home and telling my wife, like, I have some of the smartest people in Silicon Valley helping me with this project. Like, this is incredible. And I was so thrilled to be able to work with them that when I got to be their colleague, I had monster imposter syndrome and at the time, I didn't even know what it was. I felt so inferior. I felt like I was always going to be the dumbest person at this company and had no clue what was going on. But what I found was interesting was these folks, even the folks that worked in the same city, they didn't talk to each other. They weren't working on the same opportunities, right? I mean, you know this, Binny and Ramzi, like when you're an SE, you're kind of doing your own thing. You might, share a Slack channel with some folks and, get some help once in a while from your colleagues, but you're not actually spending a large chunk of time together. Yep. And I was the only remote SE at the time. Everybody else was in Toronto. And so when I got the opportunity to go into Toronto for QBRs or team meetings, the first thing I did was go, hey, I'm in town. I haven't met anybody yet. Can we all get together for a beer or pizza or whatever? Mm-hmm. And I did it without the manager, just because I felt it would be more conducive to conversation. And it ended up being sort of a tradition that, okay, Sonu's coming into town, we're all getting together. And so we would just all naturally block time when I showed up. And so not to say that the team rallied around me, but I think that was the turning point to getting everyone talking and building sort of this team that is collaborative and works together and whatever. And I wasn't the manager at the time. I had nothing to do with leading this team. I was the most junior member on it.
So if I understand you correctly, if I want to become a manager, I just take my teammates out to lunch or dinner.
Beer and pizza is the way to do it.
Okay. All right. Okay. So go ahead, Benny.
Oh, if I was just very briefly, I know you don't want to boost yourself up too much, Sonu, but if I may for you, I guess, like, I think you also, just in the very short time that we've been speaking here, you also have a really cool, like, I don't know if it's a drive behind your voice, but like whenever you say anything, I think you like, you know what you're talking about. You articulate it in such a way where there's drive behind what you're saying. So like, it's really hard for people that are listening to you to not necessarily jump on board with that. And I think that in combination with being that person that nobody's really met before, and then to have taken the initiative to, you know, get yourself out there, get to know everybody, and everybody's obviously going to like you a little bit more around pizza and beer without a doubt. Yeah, for sure. I think definitely marking off all the boxes that somebody might want to see in a good leader.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. I actually think that that quality is synonymous with SEs. I think a lot of us, especially if you're working with a technology or you're working with a customer or a use case or a business problem that you're really passionate about, that enthusiasm just comes out natural.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Very good point.
One thing we talked about last time was like leadership without a title.
Yeah.
We talk about like, hey, if you want to become a senior SE, you should act as if a senior SE and do the things that senior SEs do, right? And if you want to become a SE leader, you should act as if an SE leader and do whatever, you know, they do. But you didn't want to become an SE leader. Why did you do the SE? I'm assuming you did the SE leadership stuff, which is why you got pushed up the ranks. Why did you even start doing that? What's the benefit for you to do that sort of thing?
I have always benefited from work. I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm the luckiest like tech worker in Alberta or what it is, but I've always benefited from having really strong leaders who had flat cultures. So I mean, I've had one, maybe two people who had a very authoritarian style of leading, and it was just miserable to work there. And the observation I took away was when the culture is flat and everybody's voice counts, regardless of your title or role, it's so much more fun to go to work every day. You feel like you're part of the business. You feel like the organization strategies are your strategies and you really buy in. And for me, that's been a big motivating factor to sort of get up and come into work every day. I have to believe in what we're doing. Building it yourself can be part of how this happens, right? And so, like I said, when I got to Hortonworks and I believed in the tech so strongly, you know, as a customer, I'm the one who brought them in. I believed in the leadership there at the time. I believed in everything. I just didn't see the culture that I wanted to work in. And so I don't know. I didn't have any conscious thought into it. I just kind of built the culture that I wanted to go work in. And I think I've been doing that since.
So it's more than just going out to dinner. You must have like done something in between those dinners. Like what was that you did in between the dinners?
So first of all, going out to the dinner and going for beer or pizza or coffee or whatever, it's about the relationships.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's self-explanatory, but those connections, especially when you can meet someone face to face and spend a little bit of time with them where they can tell you about their families and their kids and, you know, where they worked before and why they're here at whatever company you're working at. Whenever they get to share a little bit about themselves, you sort of make this connection that carries with you. So the next time that they need something or you need something, you're more likely to help. And I'm not saying people don't help each other if they don't know each other. Like DocuSign, especially, the culture here is wonderful for that. But you sort of go the extra mile for friends.
Yeah.
And I have always loved working alongside my friends, and that is the culture I wanted. So you're right. In between all of those meetings, whether it's by Slack or on phone calls, or, you know, when a new policy came out that we all thought was silly, we'd talk about it and debate it and deliberate and offer feedback. And just, I think I helped foster a lot of those communications that just made the team a team.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. I feel like also too, just really briefly as well, when you're drinking, or just like, yeah, especially when you're drinking, I know you don't want to talk shop, I guess, when you're kind of having beer and pizza with friends, or sorry, with coworkers after the fact, but sometimes inevitably the conversation might steer that way. And I found anyways that when drinking with colleagues, whether they be AEs or other SCs or even others in the organization that I might have a more tangential relationship with, there are always so many great insights that you're able to get out of those conversations to make things better. So yeah, I love everything about that.
You're totally right. I've always said that, like, people always ask, like, well, what is culture? Why do you care so much about that? And I know everybody has a different definition. One of the best ones that I've heard or read, I can't remember where I got it from, was culture is the sum of all of the connections and transactions between people on that organization or within that team. So if you think about that, every conversation you have, whether you're a leader or whether you're two individual contributors, is contributing to the culture, right? And if you run a flat style of organization where everybody's voice counts, everybody is contributing just as much to the leader towards building that culture that they all want to work in. I think that's so important.
Is that kind of like saying that every single person that works for you is a leader in their own right?
I think everybody has leadership potential. I think that leadership style is debatable because I think that how you view yourself and how others view you may be different. And that's just perception, right? I think that everybody who I would really sincerely hope that everybody who is on a team that I'm a part of feels like their voice matters, feels like their opinion counts, and feels like there's an open door to me or anybody else on the team if there's something that they want to chat about or that they're passionate about or that they think is silly and needs to change. If they don't feel that way, then I'm failing somewhere.
Why? Isn't it normal? Like, I don't want to tell my boss everything.
So I don't know that I have told my bosses everything either, but I think that there should be, I think that the need and the space to be created for a healthy dialogue is something that all leaders should create if they want a culture where the results surpass everybody's expectations. And I think if you think about what a leader is supposed to do, they're there first and foremost to get business results. But how they get that differs from leader to leader, right? You've got authoritarian leaders who bark orders. You've got empire builders who want to manage up and make themselves look like all the success was because of them. But in my experience and in all of the reading I've done, one of the unique ways of really memorable leaders was they got the most out of all of their employees by making it a really positive experience for everybody on the team where they buy in and they want to contribute. And the only way to do that is for them to believe in the team, the strategy, and they have everything they need to execute. It really comes down to those three fundamentals.
Yeah, I guess just like getting everybody to really believe and I guess understand that they're kind of a steward of this culture that you're trying to kind of sprinkle upon them or try to, I don't know, not emulate, but I guess the culture you're trying to put out there, if you get everybody else to kind of get to the point where they feel, well, they buy into the point where they feel again like they're a steward of that, where they want to embody everything of that same culture. Like I think that's the dream because then everybody's on the same page. And like you said before, like culture is kind of the sum of all these things, all these different interactions and I guess human transactions, all these different things. But if all of those are kind of all going in the same direction and are all more or less of the same magnitude, then how much stronger is that culture? Which, yeah, I think that'll make sense.
100%.
So I am, two thoughts come to mind. Like, how do you find the SEs that would fit that culture of yours, for one, and two, like, sometimes people inherit SEs. On like one easy way to make sure that they fit the culture is fire them and hire people who do. But how beyond that, how can you actually make sure that whoever you're hiring or whoever you inherited fit the culture that you want? Or maybe you should fit their culture. I don't know which one's right.
Well, let me ask you a different question that is a weird way of answering. Do you know any SE who thinks that their opinion shouldn't matter? Or do you know any SE who wants to go to a place every day where it's not fun to work?
I haven't met one yet.
Right. It doesn't exist.
I've met some who are complacent and like, it's not fun to work, but it's not horrible.
Okay, but complacency is a different topic that, I mean, if you want, we can dive into that one too. But I think that what I've described is so generally appealing to everybody that, I mean, who wouldn't want to work in a place where it's fun every day and who doesn't want their opinion to matter, right? I don't know anybody who doesn't fit that mold. Now, the amount that a person may contribute could be personality driven and personality dependent. And then again, there's a leadership skill that comes into place just with experience to make sure that no one person is dominating a topic or a debate, right? I've worked alongside and I've had people on my team before who are, I don't know if it's just that they're so introverted or if it's just their innate personality that they tend to be very shy and they tend to be the last person to speak up, or they save their question to make sure that everybody else has time to speak first, even if it means that they might get burned and don't get the opportunity because we timed out. You know, what I have to do is make sure they're, first of all, being comfortable being singled out by me so that they get to go first the next time. And if they are, then it's up to me to observe that they didn't get to speak and that they need to speak first on the next conversation, right? Little things like that to go bring the best out of everybody to help them participate in the culture. I'm not going to say fit into the culture because they're creating it. It's not fit if they're part of creating it, right?
Nice.
Really good insight.
So it's not you who's creating the culture. You're just enabling the team to create their own culture, a positive culture.
Yeah, I mean, one of the leadership wisdoms that was passed down to me from a leader that I really respect is that our job is to create space for other people to do their best work. And that comes from everything from creating culture to winning deals to learning something to developing themselves as leaders, whatever it is, right?
Makes sense. Yeah. Oh, there's a thought that came to mind that I just blanked out on. Oh yeah, I guess like it kind of goes back to that whole idea about, or I'm kind of sometimes a delusionally optimistic person, and sometimes for the worst, but like seeing the best in everybody is just, I think, a pretty good quality to have, but could burn people as well. But from a corporate perspective, to kind of have that same mentality of recognizing that, yeah, like everyone's potential is almost limitless to a degree. It's just a matter of like how to get somebody to really realize that that's obviously going to be different. And so I love that whole idea about, hey, like, yeah, I'm not going to mold you into a culture. I'm going to, facilitate you or enable you to be your best and help grow this culture to something that we all want to be a part of.
Yeah, it's really important, not only to make it more fun and make it a better fit, but from a business perspective, it has been proven to drive better results,
Sure, yeah.
right? So again, it comes down to, do you know anybody who wants to be on the losing team? I mean, of course not. We all want to be winners and we all want to be on the winning team. And so by harnessing everybody's skill in a way that makes it positive and makes it fun and makes it enthusiastic, and by also getting them to do better work and better delivery than they even thought was possible from themselves, that's the goal, right? And I think all leaders who subscribe to this philosophy strive towards this every day.
Yeah.
Have you met an SE that just could not fit or could not help build the culture, and what did you do with that situation?
No, I haven't yet. I've met people who struggled to voice their opinion, and I work on that in a way that I described earlier. I've met other folks who didn't care as much about the culture. So what I mean by that is I once had a very, very technical, amazing SE, like probably had the reputation of being one of the best SEs in the business, was always able to lead technical sales cycles, very complex sales cycles. Customers loved this person. But the person just didn't care if the team talked or didn't talk or whatever. They were just there to do their work, do really good work, get personal value and satisfaction out of it. And that's what they needed. It took a long time. It probably took me a year and a half to find a way to sort of crack that nut and bring that person into the fold. And what it really took was me having a lot of one-on-one time with that individual to truly understand what makes them tick, and then how to bring that to the team in a way that they could participate more in conversations. So what I didn't realize that I was doing was setting up conversations and giving space on topics that they didn't really have an investment in. So, and that's why they weren't participating, right? So I was trying to find out what motivated them and bringing that in.
Yeah, it's like when we meet friends and they talk about cars, even though they're my friends and they're bragging about their BMW or something because we're Lebanese and that's what we do. I might not participate with them. Doesn't mean I don't like them or anything. Just means this conversation is not interesting.
That's right.
But from their perspective, I'm aloof, as an example. So, and it can be the same thing in work environment, basically, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, it can. And it gets even more unique within SEs because sometimes we only work on opportunities within our vertical or our geography or whatever artificial territory we have all carved out to go operate in, right? And so when the conversations crosses those boundaries, people say, well, that's not my department, I don't care. And they kind of sit back in their chair and just let everyone else talk. And so there's ways to raise the level of the conversation to make it more inclusive for everybody. And I think that's what I learned after a year and a half of working with that person, of how to do a better job on that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Maybe quick question around, I don't know if this is the right word for it. Maybe it's too strong. And this isn't like on any examples or anything that you've mentioned, but just in general, like since you describe culture in such a way where it isn't so much a mold that people are going to mold, or it's not so much a thing where people are going to mold themselves to fit within, but rather it's something that everybody is kind of building and contributing towards together to build this thing that's larger than everyone. Sometimes you hear about, let's say, people who are toxic towards a workplace culture. Is that a thing, do you think, like using that same idea, that's using that same framework? Or is it really the person that would be toxic towards a culture, perhaps, versus perhaps maybe like a manager not providing them the right environment for them to be their best, and as a result, they're not buying in? Or can there be people who are toxic towards a culture that maybe just shouldn't have been part of that organization?
Great question. I don't know that I have the answer to that. I will tell you through experience, I have seen what I thought was a toxic person towards the culture. So no matter how positive the conversation was going, we were all high-fiving about our wins. They would always find a way to, like, I don't know, bring into the conversation a really tough loss that we were all still kind of licking our wounds over, or just bring the energy level just down in a way that was like, okay, maybe we should all just go home. And that sucked, right? Like that's not fun for anybody and nobody really wanted to work there. Part of it was, again, I don't think that they could relate to the topics that they were in, but something else was wrong too, right? They just weren't happy. And again, I kind of took it upon myself to go spend a lot of one-on-one time with that person to go figure out like, hey, what's going on? Like, is it time for a change? Or are you not getting something? Is there a rock in your way that, we need to go figure out together how to move? Or why is there so much focus on the negative and a lot less focus on the positive, considering the results that you're getting? Like there's a lot of wins here, right? So what's going on? And in that case, there was a personal matter involved and there were no outlets to sort of take out any of the stress, and it was spilling over into work without realizing it. It was just a big subconscious thing. And so, there was almost like a therapy sessions, for lack of a better description, involved to go give that person space to go get all those things off their chest.
That's amazing. I bet it really speaks to the whole idea about like never attacking a person, but attacking the problem. And so like to have taken the effort to really understand that, hey, or to first recognize that, hey, this isn't just this person that's just like a Debbie Downer, like to their core, but rather there's probably something that's affecting this person to be this way. I think that's a really good way to go about it, and then to attack the actual issue. Hopefully.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes people have just reached the end of their lifespan at that particular organization, and nothing's going to remotivate them or inspire them other than a change. And I think everybody in our field goes through that at one point in their career. Right.
One thing I wanted to touch on regarding this, I wrote, or we were talking last time when we met, and I mentioned that I believe it's the sales engineer's job to make the sales engineer manager's job easier. And I saw in your notes that you disagree with that.
Totally.
Why is that?
Because I don't think that's true in the SE field or anywhere. I think, let's focus on SE since that's our field. What would you two describe as the core function of the SE? What do you think your main objectives are?
Oh,
and I would hope that you both have the same answer.
Yeah, to help customers solve problems using the technology, the tools that we have in our company.
Okay, Benny?
Yeah, I guess something similar. So yeah, so to be able to provide or to be able to convey the most value of our solution, whatever it is, to the customer within the context of their issue or problem.
Fantastic. So if I could paraphrase what you both just said, sounds like you both agree that the core function of the SE is to go get the technical win, become that trusted advisor to the customer. And I'm going to throw one more out there that I'm sure you both do anyway, but you didn't specifically mention. It's also to become a really good business partner to your AE.
Yeah.
So if you ask me, I think those are the three core functions that all, Benny, as you're describing, kind of go together, right?
For sure. I'll probably even say, well, yeah, so the internal functions as well. I didn't even mention that. So beyond just the AE, I would say, I think we're starting to see too the idea of an SE or the pre-sales team having an impact across just the organization as a large. So
100%. Yeah, that's another tangent that I would love to talk about. We've never been in a better era for the SE field. But going back to Ramzi's question, if you think about those three core functions, getting the technical win, becoming a better business partner with the AE, and becoming a better business value driver for your customer, none of those three things have anything to do with the SE manager, right? Now, what I found in my career is those empire builders that I spoke about before almost set up and create, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, a culture of taking credit for other people's work, showing off the work of their teams as if they had a lot to do with it. And those practices, when repeated over and over again, sort of create this unexplained or unmitigated need to make your boss look good. And I've never subscribed to that. I actually think, Ramzi, why I took so much issue with it is because I've been raised in leadership to do the exact opposite. The successes of the team are theirs. The failures are my responsibility for not figuring out how to turn those into successes. But more importantly, and I think where I'm working now is a great example of that. When a team has a lot of success, it's up to the leader to go highlight and make sure the focus and attention comes to those successes. They have nothing to do with me. If somebody on the team has an amazing technical win that just had unexplained hurdles and was really difficult, and we were on the outside looking in, but somehow they found a way to bridge a relationship and get it done, or find a creative way to construct a solution that really solved a good problem and close the deal, that needs attention from the business. That is like Herculean effort that should have a shine upon it. And if I have the opportunity to go make that shine, which I've done in the past, it's never about me. And I don't think it should be. I think that people who think that their job is to make their managers look good are maybe missing the point of their job in the first place, and therefore not maximizing their potential and not maximizing what the organization is expecting out of them.
I agree with everything you said. I think what I meant was it's done to not make the job harder for the manager. For example, if I get into a fight with my salesperson, I would be a great SE is able to figure out things themselves and not dump stuff on their manager. A lot of SEs just say, that guy is a AO and I don't want to deal with him. Whereas a great SE would partner with their account manager and figure out a way how to get it done, right? That's what I meant. But like, I don't want to dump my issues on my manager. If I need help, I need guidance, I will definitely ask for guidance. And I would hope, like, I work with a lot of SEs right now, and when they do something great, my job is to highlight them. But I don't want to have to respond to an email that they wrote because it's full of typos or they said something that's not correct to the customer. That's what I meant by making the job easier versus giving credit to the manager. I would never give credit to my manager.
So the two comments there. One, I mostly agree with what you said. I don't think that the job of an SE is to make their manager's life harder.
Yeah.
Either. That's not at all what I intended. But I would say some of the things that you highlighted often come with experience and maturity as well. So, for example, junior SEs who are at the early phases of their career may not know how to interact with their AEs and may not know what behaviors are a best practice and what behaviors drive poor results. They may need that coaching, they may need that guidance first, and in which I don't want junior SEs, if they're dumping this problem on their manager. I feel like that's part of the job. I think as leaders, we're there to help guide and coach and develop these people in addition to getting the results.
Yeah. So I've worked with SEs who are experienced, who were getting into fights with their account managers, and then the SE manager had to go into like marriage counseling and make sure everything's okay, right? And that's why that's where that came from. And if I can, so I also, so that's one manager. Another manager was actually my sales director, and he was doing a lot of hands-on for sales. If I was taking his time away from doing sales to like handhold me with something, I felt guilty because, hey man, go out and sell and let me take care of my area. I will take care. I have ownership over my area. You're not gonna have to check my work. That's what I meant by that. Like maybe it's about taking ownership of your role. And also, like, if you want to become an SE manager at some point, if you're helping your manager today, taking some of the tasks off their hand, that's a better chance of actually becoming an SE manager.
It's great. Yeah, if you can, anything you can do to contribute more to the organization, as long as it's fun for you and it's delivering value, absolutely do it.
Yeah. And okay, something else. Benny, did you have anything to add to that?
Just really quickly, yeah, it's just funny just listening, because like, I don't know, I'm relatively early in my career. I guess, yeah, I've been an SE for a couple of years, maybe, or a few years now. And so like listening to both your perspectives, I guess just kind of goes to show how perspective is such a beautiful thing. How both of you kind of have like both have agency over your role and have ownership over your roles and responsibilities. So like, let's say, Ramzi, you're just saying, right, you as an SE, and I feel the same way, right? Like as an SE, I feel responsible for everything that I have control over. And I also feel responsible for trying to make my boss's life easier, in the sense that I know he's busy. So if I could not bring something up to him, if I could deal with it myself, I'll do that because I have agency over those things. I have ownership over those things. But on the flip side, Sonu, and as any sort of manager or leader, would also have the perspective of the sense that, hey, I'm your manager. I'm here to facilitate your growth and facilitate you to be your best person. And so come to me with those things, because this will now allow me to maybe make you better. And so I don't know, I think it's just really interesting how like people could be very much on the same page and have all the same goals towards an organization, even have the same like internal drive to do whatever they want to do. But I guess in the workplace, you put these two people together without a conversation beforehand, they might not work as well as they might want to, just because their perspectives are a little bit different about things.
Really well said. I think the beautiful part of perspectives, like you said, is that we all get to learn from each other. So there's no one right way to solve a problem, as you both know. And if there's different styles of working or different solutions to problems that people have been experienced in, great. Take the best from everybody around you and build those into your own practice, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
So.
So it's funny how like we're both saying similar things. We disagree,
Yeah.
but then we agree. But we come from different perspectives, and I guess we both learn from each other in this case. Which that's the beauty of the podcast. I get to learn
Totally.
from every single guest, and people. This is, I think, the first time I disagreed with someone or someone disagreed with me on the podcast, which is interesting. It's
Breaking barriers.
yeah, it's exciting to actually have a conversation versus like just asking questions, which was great. You did say something else in your notes that we just heard about your leadership style right now. We heard a lot about it. But you mentioned that you have different leadership style from other SE managers that you've heard on the podcast, and not necessarily good or bad, just different. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
I yeah. For background, for those listening who don't know about the leadership styles, I mean, just Google it. Google leadership style, and you'll find a blog that talks about the 5 leadership styles or the 8 leadership styles or the 7 or whatever number you subscribe to or that blog author chose to write about. But the underlying principles behind all of them are the same, even if the names of them are slightly different. I remember listening to someone on the podcast, I don't remember who it is, but they were talking about how they often need an authoritarian style. And that is the style I dislike the most. It is the one that I draw upon the least for all of the reasons that we described, because it is like the antithesis of what we all talked about. It's like canceling out the weight of everybody else's opinion if you're the dictator on the team. I know it's needed sometimes, like if there's no debate and someone needs to make a decision, okay, then that responsibility falls with the leader, but everybody's opinion should still matter. And I still don't think that that's an authoritative leader style.
Yeah.
So, it's just a different way of thinking. I've had authoritarian leaders in the past in very senior roles. So, like a CTO, or for example, very authoritarian, but regardless of whether they came off that way or not, there was always a debate or a conversation or a whiteboarding or something that could be done to change their mind. And I think that that is so important for leaders. We don't always know the right answer. I learned so much from my team on a day-to-day basis. I can't even tell you, like I will never know the technology as well as they know it. I will never have the experience in the field that they have because I'm not in the field as much as I used to be anymore. I learn from them all the time. And if I'm not open-minded enough to understand that someone who's 20 years my junior probably has a better answer than I do, then what kind of leader am I?
And that manager you're talking about that you heard on the podcast, was it Chris White?
It was not Chris White. I would never disrespect Chris White publicly. Privately over a beer, yes, I will tell him. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, we both know Chris White, and he's a good friend. He's been on the show like I don't know 20 times or 100.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah.
I never knew anything about Chris White, and then I listened to your podcast in the early days of We the Sales Engineers, and you had Chris White on, and he was talking about his book. And I swear to God, within 24 hours, I went online and I bought his book and I read it cover to cover. And then, okay, so for me, I'm like this, little SE guy in Alberta in Canada that no one's heard of and probably doesn't care about. He's a big time author in the SE field and like blah, blah, blah. I'm a keynote speaker everywhere. I just contacted him and he was so open and so receptive. I was really blown away. And so we ended up having a great conversation. And I told him about an initiative that I was trying to do at my organization. And he said, well, that sounds really exciting. And I said, yeah, but it's an uphill battle because of this, this, and this. What do you think? And he said, well, would you like help? And I'm like, yeah, totally want help. And we ended up working together. I brought him into my old organization and we built out an international training plan that he is still executing, and I'm no longer there to see it through, but we did the pilot in Canada and it was amazing. Chris is great.
Yeah, Chris is an amazing person. I don't want to talk say too many positive things about him because then he'll never let me hear the end of it. But yeah, no, we love Chris here, and he's been doing this for a while, and he's like kind of like you, when humble and modest and all that. So
he's turned into an unexpected mentor of mine. I don't even know if he knows that he's in that role for me, but he is. I'll give you an example. When I was thinking about leaving Cloudera and coming over to DocuSign, Chris was one of my first phone calls.
Nice.
Yeah, I called him up. I chatted about it. He walked me through pros and cons. He gave me a few ideas to go think about, and he challenged me. He asked me questions that I hadn't considered yet about making a switch like this. About at that time we were expecting probably within like a few weeks of me switching jobs for our second kid. It was COVID. My wife would be going on maternity leave. Like it was a huge amount of risk to take on at a crazy time in the world. Chris helped me, work through all of those risks in my head and come to a decision.
Nice. Well, congratulations on the second baby.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's
He's 6 months old now, and he's going through a weird grunting phase. So if it sounds like someone's killing a bird in the background, it's probably just him feeding.
My daughter's almost 6 months and she's going through a spitting phase. That's all she does all the time. All right, it is time to move on to the not so fire round. Benny, I know you have to get going, so how about you just say your goodbyes and I'll take it from here.
Okay, no, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, great meeting you, Sonu. Thanks for listening, everybody that's listening. But, yeah, I do got to drop out right now. Definitely.
Really, really great to meet you. I hope we speak again. Thanks, Benny.
Likewise. Take care. Hey, Ramzi, too.
See it. All right, Sonu. Usually Benny asks the first question, but he's bailing on us, so
Okay.
I'm gonna have to do it. What do you love about? Actually, I think you already answered it, but let's try it again. What do you love about leading sales engineering teams?
About leading the teams?
Yeah.
I love everything to do with having ownership of the culture, even though everybody's equally contributing to crafting it and building it. I love the fact that I have the accountability when it comes to it, even though I don't necessarily have the day-to-day execution, right? So I have to have a lot of trust, and I trust people that I feel like I'm working well with and that I'm friends with, and I love working in those kind of cultures.
Nice. All right, that leads me to the second question. What would you change about it?
Ooh, that's tough. The role of an SE manager, as you probably know, is so different organization to organization. In my last few companies, SE managers were not necessarily the Uber SE, because I don't think that's a good thing either, but they were far more customer facing and involved more in deal strategy than they are here. Now, I've had that conversation with my leadership team, and they've left it up to me to go define what I want the role to be. So I think that's something I'd like to work on. I'd like to get, once COVID's over and we're allowed to travel again, I would love to be able to get back in front of customers and be a bigger part of deal strategy and technical win strategies.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you read I guess that okay? Let's go here. Is there a resource you would recommend for aspiring SE managers or SE managers?
Ooh. So I think for anybody aspiring SEs or SE managers, we already talked about Chris's book, right? The 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers. That's probably the most complete body of work in our field that I've seen, both from a strategic point of view as well as tactical and real day-to-day applications. Even as a manager, I still rely on principles as I'm coaching my teams who are struggling with one of those 6 habits. For aspiring leaders, and I say leaders, not SE managers, because I don't care if you're leading an SE team or if you're leading, your softball team. The book that really struck a nerve with me at the beginning and kind of helped me understand what was important to me in leadership and craft my style was The $1 Trillion Coach, story of Bill Campbell.
Okay.
It's written by 3 Googlers, Alan Eagle, Jonathan Rosenberg, and Eric Schmidt were the authors.
Okay.
So for those who don't know Bill Campbell, he's like a Silicon Valley legend who was a high school football coach, and he just found himself consulting with Steve Jobs, with Larry and Sergey from Google, and he sort of became like the de facto coach or guide of all of these amazing Silicon Valley leaders. And it's really interesting to hear that all these high-tech powered CEOs that you look towards for leadership also had coaching from Bill.
Yeah, that's something that's highly lacking in the SE world, sales world, full of sales coaches. All right, so I wanted to ask you earlier if you ever read John Kerr's book, The Sales Engineer Manager.
Manager's Handbook, yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't finished it yet. I'm about 2/3 done.
Well, the beauty about his book is that you can just read chapter at a time, and because it's kind of like a university textbook. But he talks a lot about how SE managers, leaders should be out there in front of the customers. So
Totally agree.
And another book that you just reminded me of so much today is Extreme Ownership. I always talk about it.
Yeah.
Jocko Willing. So yeah.
Extreme Ownership is a good book. I mean, probably for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been reading tons of business leadership books, and yeah, I mean, those ones are well known for good reason. They're fantastic.
Yeah, and I loved listening to the book Extreme Leadership because it's read by Jocko.
Yeah, he's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I don't listen to Jocko once a week, there's something wrong. All right, last question of the day of the not so fire on. Is there a habit you're working on to improve as a leader?
That's a tough one. So professionally, I'm going to say professionally, I'm coming into a leadership role where I inherited most of the team. I think I've only hired 1 person so far into this team. Thankfully for me, the team is already amazing, and there's nothing that I would change. But that said, I don't have years of credibility built up with them like I did at my previous organization. So for me to give candid feedback, I'm finding it difficult to go do, and I'm working on overcoming that hurdle and just being upfront, honest, and truthful about what I see.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't envy you on those situations. I remember when they hired a new manager for us within my team. Not everybody was open to it, and he came from Cisco, and he turned on his camera where everybody else had theirs off, and instead of being a positive thing, it turned out to be a negative thing as part of the culture that we already had.
Yeah.
Look at
fair
that guy;
enough.
he's turning on the camera, whereas
It's funny because when I took my last leadership position, I was being promoted from an individual contributing SE working alongside my peers to then managing them. And people always told me, "Oh, that's the hardest job you're ever going to get as a leader." I totally disagree. Coming into an organization fresh where you know nothing about the technology, you don't know any of the people, and you have zero credibility, that's harder.
like, what do you start working on when you join a new company? Do you work on the technology or do you work on the people?
You have to do both simultaneously because there's no time to do them in serial. You have to go through all of their onboarding and all of the courses to be able to speak, I mean, at least somewhat intelligently about the tech. Like no one's going to throw you out into a customer facing situation within the first few months,
Right.
As a leader, especially. But you also don't want to know so little about the tech that your team can never really come to you with issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Sonu, this was great, and we should do it again.
I would love that.
If people want to reach out and connect with you, where can they do that?
Whatever avenue you want. LinkedIn's probably the one that I'm on the most now. You can reach out to me there. It should be easy to find because I'm probably the only Sonu Sahi in Canada, let alone the one in Edmonton at DocuSign. Set up coffee, ping me, message me, whatever. I love meeting new people, especially those in our field, and bridging those connections and conversations. I love it.
Nice. I will have a link to your LinkedIn on the show notes. And yeah, when this whole thing is over and we're able to travel, whether I go to Edmonton or you come to Canada, Ottawa, I'd love to grab some coffee.
That'd be fantastic. Ramzi, thank you very much, and pass on my thanks to Vinny as well. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've been a long time listener, as you know, and so to be a guest on here, like it's such an honor for me. Thank you.
The honor is mine. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonu, for coming on. This was amazing. I have so many notes and so many things I should have asked and could have asked if we had the time. And hopefully you'll come back at some point and we can continue the discussions. A few things. We don't have many SE managers in Canada, so the fact that he is an SE manager, he's based out of Alberta, which isn't really a tech hub as far as I know. It shows that anybody can do it from anywhere. He also kind of became an SE leader by being a leader, not necessarily a manager, but he was an individual contributor who then became a leader. And I just love talking to him about the different leadership styles and how he likes to have a flat culture versus, hierarchical. So it was great. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this. And you notice that Sonu and I didn't agree on everything. I mean, we might have ended up agreeing on a lot more than what was initially thought when we started having the conversation about NSC's job is to make his boss's job easier. Maybe the wording is incorrect, but there were some valid points there, and he had lots of great points which allowed me open my eyes to a few things. Like, no, maybe it's not my job to make my boss's job easier. Maybe it's my job not to make it harder, but maybe it's their job to make my life easier. And there's so many different ways we can talk about this. So this was a great conversation. I'm looking forward to the next one. And again, if you think it will be useful for anyone, whether it's someone starting their career or someone wants to get into leadership, please make sure you share this podcast with them, whether it's here or, we post it every week on YouTube as well. So if you want to check that out, by all means, do that. And I think that's it. With that, I did thank you guys. So with that, this is Ramzi signing off.